Hi, this is Jim Gibson with CableSupply.com, and today I am in Vista, California, and I'm looking at this really cool looking building. This is an office building, and it really has character. It's not your normal tilt-up type of building that really doesn't have any character to it, but this is cool, and it's 10,000 square foot building. We're going to look at how they're cabling it or how they're restructuring the cable, because this building has been around for a while, 35 years, and it's been recabled a couple times, so the contractor is going to look at getting it up to speed. Now, some of the cable here is fantastic. It's Cat 6A, and it's high speed, and it's already in the walls. But they're gonna salvage that cable, and they're gonna use it over again and over again. Now, we're right on Route 78, so if you're thinking of an office building, this is easy convenience. You got a lot of parking spaces, and you got a major road here. Easy to get to San Diego, easy to get to Orange County. It's just really a nice place to be. So it's a beautiful building, and we're going to go inside and we're going to look at the cabling. Now, out front there's no parking, obviously, but in the back there's hundreds of spots of parking, and it has some really nice features about it. And let's see if we can look at one. I don't know if I can get into it. Maybe we'll try one other way, because but it's a patio. Great place to have lunch. It's quieter at the patio than it is here. It's over on the other side of the wall, so you got a lot of security. It's just a cool looking building all around. Cool looking building. And see if I can get in. I don't think I can, because I don't think it's open. But you can see here's some private parking spaces. But we're going to get right to the IT here pretty soon. But this is cool, and they're still working on this building, so you're going to see some of that. You know, some of the trash here and things like that. But man, this is a cool looking building. It's a nice place to work. It's been all redone inside. So let's go inside. Hi, this is Jim again. Now we're inside. I showed you the outside of the building. This is a great building. Now, the contractor's coming in and he's redoing everything, and you can see some of these walls look pretty good in here. And he's redoing everything. He's doing a really good job of doing it, things like that. And this is the data room, or what was the data room before they decided to do improvements to it, to the building, and rehab the whole building. And they brought it up to code. It's ADA compliant. It really looks great. So this is where the future IT room will be, at least one of them. This building is probably going to be divided. It's 10,000 square feet, so it's probably going to be divided. But let's look at what do I often say, the good, the bad, and the ugly of backboards. And this is a backboard that will be cleaned up, and all this cable needs to come out. And it's mostly really old analog stuff, and as you can see, there are 66 blocks there with mushrooms at the top, and you can still use 66 blocks and mushrooms, and blue boards make life a lot easier. And a blue board is the 66 blocks attached to this. Sometimes it's wood, sometimes it's metal, and it's called a blue board. And they come this way, so it makes it easier to just slap it on the wall, and you don't take a lot of time leveling things. You know, you have to level each 66 block and line it up and all that other stuff. You don't have to do that when you use a blue board. Not used very much anymore, to be honest with you. So, you know, you got yourself a pretty nice setup for 20 years ago. It doesn't really work today. You can see a lot of this beige type of cable. That's the old telephone cable. And again, this is all analog. Now, they did a nice job. It doesn't look nice, but they actually did a nice job on marking what each one is, and it's usually extension numbers or CO numbers, the last 4 digits, and they mark out certain patches on there, and that's pretty much the way it has been done in the past. These are D-rings. They're really helpful. And what's nice about D-rings is they're the same today as they were 30 years ago. And I think I have a video on this where you score these D-rings right here, you hit it with a hammer, and then you have a hook like that, and you can actually hook the cable. You don't have to use a whole D-ring, and it's neat. It works also just as nice. It's easier to get in and out. You don't have to feed through the D-ring. You just hook it on there. So you got a lot of other equipment here. You got alarms, this alarm system here, and it looks like you got a pretty new alarm system right here. And that's fairly new. That's the latest, greatest alarm system. And I'm sure this guy would have put it in a little differently, because here's the power going across, and I kind of like that power. It looks good. It's not been there very long. Well, it has some dirt, some dust on it. That's how I tell how long equipment's been there. You just rub your hand across the top and see how much dirt is there. If you got a lot, then it's been there for a long time. Like, look at this old alarm system. Look at that stuff on top of there. So you got a lot of old equipment here, and they'll be removing it and rehabbing this whole backboard, bringing it up to standards, not only standards, but making sure that it's updated and it's doing what it's supposed to do. So over here, you have your fiber optics right here. So this is interduct. Never confuse this with conduit. This is not conduit. This is, in this case, it's split loom. It doesn't have to be split loom, but in this case, it's split loom. Usually it's orange in color, not yellow, but in this case, someone put yellow in there, and that's okay. That's fine. Yeah, orange or yellow. And this right here is from AT&T. This is the feed that AT&T brings in, and they just mark it with tape, I guess it looks like. But it's obviously, it's a fiber optic cable. It's very thick. Most of it, 99.9% of it, is just protection of the cable. Fiber optic cable is only as thick as a hair. And all this is right here. You can see, it's kind of hard to see, but all this is, in some cases, protection from lightning protection, stuff like that. This is 66 block. This is all telephone equipment that the phone company owns. Anything past that, the tenant owns. And so if you see, this is an RJ31X, and this is also telephone equipment. So all this probably here is telephone equipment. And then you're going to take your cross connect and you're going to go across, and then you're going to go up to your 66 blocks. And this is old analog stuff. So you're going to go into your 66 blocks, and from there you're going to feed out to your phone system. But there's no phone system here anymore because it's ancient. Look how ancient it is. Man, that has to be 30 years old. That's an old system, and it's still plugged in. That's a lot of wasted energy right there. Some of the other stuff, you got some circuits from the phone company. I think it's the E&M lines, if I remember right. And they're still plugged in. They're just eating up power. There's no need for them. You got your T1s here. That might be T1s, come to think of it. Look at the dust on top. Remember, that's a good indication of how long something's been there in the phone room. So this is an average phone room. This is what you're going to see. But here's your T1 circuit right here. They had, at least at one point, they had 3 T1 circuits in here. And they usually label them like this because T1 circuits have higher voltages than just regular CO lines. So you got to be careful with T1 circuits. And there's your equipment, your fiber optic equipment is right there. And there's your interduct. Remember, it's not conduit, it's interduct. Conduit, all other places, when it has fiber in it, it's called interduct. And it comes in different sizes. And again, this is split loom because it's split, it's a loom. But in most cases, it's not. It's not a split loom. And there's bigger ones. There's, ones that are, can be, like that thick type of stuff. Here again is some phone company stuff. And this is RJ21X, and I doubt there's any circuits on there because there's no circuits in this place. Atrain, I'm sorry. Dealt with this before. This is probably a T1 modem. I don't know what this is. I have no idea. Oh, there's another one from the same company. We sold these but years ago. I haven't seen one in years. So that's your normal look at a phone. At a backboard and how it's designed. And yeah, they're always looking like this. And it's not that hard to find which this wire goes to and what its purpose is. A lot of times you do it this way. You get it. I don't know if I can show it to you, but you can trace it because you can see how it moves and trace it all the way back to where it goes. It's easy to trace, just looks confusing. This is most likely a T1 circuit right there. That's why they have those bridge clips that are red. You don't want to put your finger on them They can have higher voltages. I don't know what this is probably from alarm system, the red stuff. Usually red cable. People use red cable for alarms. And then telephone cables, all the other colors. This is a lot of old junk. 25 pair. There's an Amphenol connection for a 25 pair. I haven't seen an Amphenol connection in years. But again, all this will be cleaned up and taken out, brought up to standards and things like that. And that's why I was asked to take a look at it, to give recommendations. Like this will probably go. This needs to go. This movement here, it's not even attached to anything. And it has a power cord going to the AT&T fiber optic router. So that's where we're at today. Is this your normal backboard? It's messy, it's dirty, and technicians have been dealing with this for years, a lot of modifications, things like that. But again, all this is going to be taken out because they really are doing a really nice job when it comes to their contractor redoing everything. And I talked to them yesterday about saving some cables, because you got a lot of cables in here that are Cat 6A, so you really don't see that very often right now in 2021. But that's really the way to go these days, is if you're going to go into a building, use Cat 6A. So that must have been upgraded just a year or two ago before the tenant left, before they started their tenant improvements. An old rack. This is an old rack right there. Everything's unbolted. There's nothing active in it right now. It's just here to be reattached in the near future. I kind of like, someone at least use a ladder rack here for the cable, and that was kind of nice. And you got some old patch panels here. So these old patch panels, you don't want to reuse them again. Once you use them once, just throw them out. They're just not worth anything. So if you're going to recable a building or stuff like that, and you think you're going to reuse these patch panels, just throw them out. And this is Cat 6 patch panel, so it's not a bad one when it was originally put in. That's probably latest, greatest, and it's still considered very current. But it's just not worth the money to repunch down. It's just not going to work. Now this is your fiber optic bin. You can see here's your inner duct going to it, and you got your fiber optic distribution box in here. And so, or do you know? It's not. Yeah, it is. Fiber optic distribution box. I have no idea what it's an AT&T piece of equipment. This is your switch, a Cisco switch, and you can see the fiber optics going in there, and it switches. Now, this is only one of 2 data rooms in this building, and this is a nice one. It's going to turn out nice. The thing I like about this is it has an independent air conditioner. It also has a backup fan, so if the air conditioner dies, this fan actually goes just to the other side of the room, and it can keep this room cool. I like this room. It's really nice. As a cybersecurity guy, the only thing I don't like about this room is that on the floor, that drain. That shouldn't be in a data room. But you got to work with what you have. And they look like they've taken some serious precautions with it and upgraded it and everything else. And if you keep your equipment off the ground, you're going to do better in a situation like this. Now let's take a look at some of the other building. This is another data room, an MDF. I thought it was an IDF, but it's not, because it has feeds in here, and it has its own separate alarm system and 66 blocks with mushrooms and things like that. So that gets kind of old school, but it has a lot of feeds in there, and there's a lot of old cable right there. You can see it. That, I don't know what color that is. It's sort of like a greenish brown, no, greenish. Usually you can identify this as old cable. But the nice thing about this building is, this is a small area, is this mess. Yes, even though it looks like a mess, it's actually a gift. The last tenant put in Cat 6 patch panels, but they put in Cat 6A cable. So here's your cable bundles, and they look like they were pretty good. Looked like they did a pretty good job at cabling it. They got some other funky stuff going on there. Of course, all this is really funky because as this... Anyway, let's start from the beginning here. Here's your patch panel, and then down there is your switch, and here's two other switches. I like the fact that they labeled the switch. So they got 3, 4, and I imagine switch 1 is somewhere. I don't know what that is down there at the bottom. I know it's a switch, I just don't know what it's labeled. But anyway, all this junk looks pretty bad, but it's actually functional and needs to be cleaned up and reorganized. You know, when you run cables like this without cable support, I'll show you what happens. Is they get this. Let's see if I can get it to focus. It gets this bend in it. It really starts to pull on the cable. It starts to pull on the patch panel, things like that. And this is a Cat 6 patch panel, which is nice. They got 24 ports. What is it? 4 24 ports or 2 24 and a 48? That's what it looks like. Yeah, that's what it is. I can see here 48. And then, of course, they renumbered them all the way up to 96. So in this little area here, they got 96 cables. And I'm going to show you the work area here pretty soon. And again, these cables are high-quality cables, Cat 6A. And now they got a Cat 6 patch panel. So that doesn't make much sense. But at least they cabled. The cabling is the hardest thing to change. You can always change the patch panel. And, of course, you know, it just needs to be put back up there where it is. And some people started cutting some cables. Now, I told the contractor, stop cutting cables, because if you don't know what you're cutting, if you don't know the cable you're cutting, then you know you got a problem. So hopefully he'll listen to me. So now we're in the second floor data room. And what you have here is you got some Linksys routers, switches. You got 3 switches in this room, 1 down below just sitting on the floor, and other 2 are sitting up here. And these are pretty good switches. If you look, they're 24 port power over Ethernet, PoE. So they were running, the old Tenant here was running pretty much an IP phone system with this system, and it's really good. You know, a lot of IP phones have a little mini port in the back, mini hub. I hate to call it a mini hub, mini switch. So all you need is one cable going to the phone itself, and then you plug in your computer in the back, and that really works absolutely well. Now, the whole design here is a disaster. It's hard to troubleshoot. It's hard to work on it. There's no cable support. There's no cable management here at all, and that will be corrected. I gave him advice on how to correct it. I told him that these switches are very valuable and should be kept and everything else. They don't need to be plugged in, but they should be kept. So the next tenant can bring in their own equipment, or they can reprogram this if they know how to program Linksys switches, which is part of Cisco these days. So all this is horrible. You see this, where the cable is bent down there? That's unacceptable. You don't want that. And the way all this stress on all the cables pulling against these things. Now here's a really dumb thing. If you're going to make cable, you need to make it right, and this is not made right, and this has a lot of stress on it also, or at least had at one point. And it's just not the way to do it. It's not the way to design it. I mean, why not just use a patch cord, to be honest with you? Now, I imagine that this is a crossover cable. So let's take a look at both ends. And I can see, and I can still hold up the... No, straight through. As I always look at... I put them together, I'm just doing this one hand. See the orange? Always look for the orange. Is it in the same place on both sides and it's straight through? So why not just use a patch cord? A lot more reliable than this, than making your own funky looking little things, and patch cords are so inexpensive these days. You know, you can always tell that a lot of times, not always, but you can always tell the cable of a higher category by the little bumps in it, but not always, but it is kind of interesting. So what do they got here on this funky little setup? Let's see. It looks like Cat 6A, so that was actually pretty good. But at the same time, why not just use a patch cord? Now, if you need a crossover, which these things can self-identify these outlets not needing a crossover, because the system inside knows when it's straight through, and it corrects the pinout. But remember, anytime you do two systems here, computers or whatever, you're going to need a crossover, generally speaking. This system is able to compensate for that because it has a circuitry in there that recognizes it's a straight through when it should be a crossover, but it's a straight through and it compensates for it, so you're absolutely fine. But if you want to be professional about it, put a crossover cable here or an adapter. There's a little orange adapter you can slide in on one side, and it creates a crossover effect. And so remember, crossover always goes from like system to like system. Straight through always goes from unlike systems to unlike. So computer to switch, you need straight through. Switch to switch, you need crossover. And here's the patch panel, and it's a Cat 6, but they have Cat 6A cable there. So that does not make a lot of sense, but that's okay. You know, in reality, Cat 6, Cat 6A. Cat 6A is better. It's going to handle higher speeds and stuff like that, and it's more expensive. But, you know, Cat 6 is pretty decent these days, too, in 2021, so, you know, there's no problems. Now, this mismanagement of cable here, you see this mess here? This is a mess, and it's going to cause problems eventually. You see some of these bends here? I mean, come on, that's, you know, it's being pulled down. Something has to hold up all those cables, and they're being pulled down rather than being up. So you definitely need cable management here, something to hold these cables up, things like that. Maybe even have cables of the right length. Here, these are too long. I wouldn't throw these out. I'd unplug them and use them maybe out in the office area to connect computers and IP phones with it. You know, I need to do a video on the difference between IP phones and regular analog digital systems. Some of those digital systems, like Toshiba, were actually fantastic digital systems. They did a great job. But the world's going to voice over IP, so that's the way it is. Now, this is what you got to be careful of. Right here on my back, I got a lot of open circuits here because there's construction going on, and that's absolutely fine. You see that often; it's not a problem. You just need to respect it. Again, the cables are going to go from here. They're going to go here to the third floor. So this room right here does this floor and does the third floor, and it may also do the first floor. I don't know, but let's look around. Let's look around at some of the cables. As you can see, the tenant improvements going on, and this is really a nice work that they're doing. It really looks professional, up to grade, close to it, and everything else. And also the what do you call it, door, ADA door, right? ADA door there. So it looks really nice. Let's look at some of the wiring. Some of this is old wiring that I recommended that they're going to remove some of this stuff, like that box, that old 2-port box right there needs to be removed, and the cable needs to be put behind that blank for future use. So you got a lot of that here, some of the stuff that needs to be removed and redone. Like if you look here, you got a bunch of old cables. Well, I wouldn't just cut all this and throw it out. I would cut off, oh gosh, this is really old. I would cut off the cable from the jacks, push the cable back in the wall, and it can be used as a pull string when you pull new cable. But this is really old terminal screw cables. Look at this, man. I haven't seen that in 20 years. That's really old. And that's a data jack, if I'm right. Yeah, that's a data jack. That's how they used to do it. Cat 3 Category 3 data jacks. And here are beanies. You would attach those when you want to put two cables together. Just regular beans. They come in two versions. They come in standard, which is what this one is, and then they also come in jelly beans. I call them because they're more resistant to moisture. Now what you have here is Scotch locks. These things are called Scotch locks, and it's just like a beanies, bean connectors, bee connectors sometimes they're called. But this is Scotch locks. So the difference between the two you can see, obviously. It's easy to see the difference. And this is an old jack. All this stuff can be cut right here, put back into the wall, and a faceplate put on. So, and then the same thing here. This is probably your data jacks. And yeah, I guess you can leave them here. It's no problem. But the bottom line is that you can also just cut the cable and just push the cable into the wall and then leave it there. So you have a lot of the situations in older buildings that look like that, but that doesn't mean that you just pull out the cable. Some of this cable is really valuable and is useful in the future. So a lot of times you can just put a blank on the wall, cut the jack off, put the blank on the wall, and then you can identify it later as to what cable it is, things like that. I don't know what cable this is. It's kind of strange. I have no idea. It might be speaker wire. But as you can see, construction going on. You still got a lot of old stuff that can come off the wall and redone. Now, one of the things I recommended was, let's go back to the phone room, is since we have a third floor and we have access to the third floor, I've asked the contractor to put some pretty hefty conduit going up to the third floor, more than one, because that gives you the availability in the future that you can add more cables. You get it up to the ceiling. I understand up there's a ceiling that's 4 or 5 foot high, so you can always bring your cables down through power poles to cubes if you're going to have cubes. Here, this stuff needs to come off the wall. The plastic needs to be thrown away, and the cable needs to go behind the wall. And somehow maybe protect down there from people walking on it. But don't cut the cables. Now, here, this is a lot of feeds to the floor, and there's a lot of old cable in there. But again, you just don't cut cables unless it's necessary, because you could always use them as a pull string. Can you imagine crawling back there? Recabling, well, some of these old cables can work as a pull string. Again, some of the really old stuff right here just needs to be cleaned up. When you are doing a building like this, this is not a normal commercial building because it doesn't have drop ceilings, but you do have a mezzanine upstairs, and that means you can drop cables down from the ceiling. But at the same time, you can drop cable down on the walls there. So you can just drop them down in the walls. A lot of times in the past it looks like they were just using panduit rather than actually going behind the wall. And again, some cables just need to pull the jacks off and put faceplates there. This can be knocked off the wall. This is a single port case. Just needs to come off. Same thing here. This is pretty old. You can cut the cable, push it behind the wall, put a blank there, and it'll work absolutely fine. So this right here can be put behind the wall. There's no need for it to have, oh, look at that old speaker system, intercom system. Anyway, there's no reason for it to be going up, and now is a really good time because they haven't painted yet or textured or anything else, so they can just put that right behind the wall, and that would take care of that problem there. Same thing with all these little doodad jacks down here. Single port, old, just cut them off, put it behind the wall, faceplate. going here into another side of the room. Look at all this funky cabling, and all this is going to be repaired, taken care of. Just punched a hole in the wall there, and it comes out on the other side right there. So you got a lot of junk. Man, look how old that jack is. Ooh, that's an RJ11. That's an old one. It's turned yellow. It's been out there so long. All this stuff comes off the wall. It's just junk. It's not worth salvaging, but the cable is. So the point is, save the cable on these rehabs if it's decent cable. I mean, even if it's Cat 3 or just old telephone cable, save it, because you can use it as a pull string. Just put it behind the wall, put a blank on it. You see some of the mess right there. That is a mess, absolute mess. Anyway, these are the things you run into when you're rehabbing a building. This building is going to be completely rehabbed. The right cable is going to go to the right place, and the right jacks are going to be installed, so you're already IT ready. You're ready to put in your computers, your IP phone system, and everything else. It's all right there for your use. So thank you for joining me today. I very much appreciate it. It's a little bit of walkthrough of a building on a Saturday morning that normally a lot of trades are here doing their work, and I've given them advice as to what to keep and what to throw away. Gosh, I didn't see that.
Look at that. That's interesting. It just takes a little extra effort to put it behind the wall. I don't know why the old technicians are running Panduit all over the place, especially now. I mean, you're going to do this type of building, and you're going to do all the drywall repairs and make it really, you know, when they're done, it really look nice. And to do that, you got to get rid of some of this old cable. Again, this is Jim Gibson from Cable Supply. Look, if you like this type of stuff, give me a thumbs up, subscribe. I really appreciate it, and hope you're having a great day.